Hi, writers. I hope you're doing well and staying safe. This is a time like no other. This time of school closure is really, hopefully, a once in a lifetime event. It is so important that we document our experiences for the future, for ourselves, and for our families. Social scientists have made it very clear that this is a time that they're going to go back and study to see how people coped, how people reacted, and what life was like during this coronavirus closure time. So today I'm going to be showing you a narrative writing lesson where we are going to be thinking about some of the small moments that we've had since school has been closed and turning those into a short little narrative piece that we can keep forever as a documentation of this weird time. So before we get started, there's a couple things you'll need. You're going to need a pen or pencil, something to write with, and either your writing notebook or a piece of paper. So I have my regular writing notebook from school. You can go ahead and grab yours if you have it, or just a regular piece of paper. Please pause the video right now and go grab those things. Restart it when you've got them. Have you got everything you need? Are you sure? Because I'm actually going to ask you to write some stuff down. Okay, good. So I want you to flip to a brand new page in your notebook, and I want you to set up your paper like this. It should say emotional timeline. This is a strategy for gathering some ideas of what to write about. This is the hardest part for many students because coming up with ideas of good topics is just hard for everybody. So an emotional timeline is just a line across your page. So draw a line, and positive emotions are going to be up here. Negative emotions are going to be down here. And I want you to think of everything that's happened since school got out. For us, that was March 11th, so over a month ago. And all of the different feelings and emotions that you've had related to school being out. So I'm going to show you on mine, and if some of these emotions feel like some of the things you've been feeling, you can go ahead and add it to your emotional timeline if you want. So the first thing I think of is like on that day when it was announced that school was going to be out for 2 weeks, there was a lot of excitement. When I told my 6th and 7th period class, they just exploded into cheers and excitement. You know who you are if you're watching this. Like this idea of having 2 weeks off in the middle of the school year, unexpected. Wow, so exciting. Pretty soon, however, that turned into feeling scared because I realized how serious the situation is for them to close school, and I had a lot of fear. There have been moments of definitely feeling relaxed, which is a positive emotion, like not having to wake up early. Also times of feeling bored, right? Like not as much to do since we can't leave our house. There have also been a lot of times of feeling really like anxious, just like that anxiety feeling. There have been funny moments for sure with my family, with my baby, with my dog. And then another emotion that I think of is like kind of like anxiety, but worry. I've been worrying a lot about the people who I care about not catching it myself. So you can see that my emotional timeline has some positive and some negative on it. Will you take a moment and draw your own and then restart the video when you're done? Okay, writers, did you get 3 or 4 emotions on your timeline? Maybe you have even more. If you don't have 3 or 4, you can pause the video and keep working on it and come back when you're done. So these are just emotions. And our job today is to come up with stories, to figure out what is that small moment that I could write about. So in order to turn these emotions into stories, I want you to pick an emotion and ask yourself, what is a specific moment where I felt that particular feeling, and where's the story in that? So for example, I could tell the story of the time that I felt really, really scared when I first read about who was at most risk for getting seriously ill and dying. And I learned that from the coronavirus, and I learned that it was people who are older. And I thought of my parents and my grandparents, and I felt really, really scared for them in that moment. I could also write about a funny moment. Like, you know how there's been like no ingredients in the stores lately? So I wanted to make cookies and I used ingredients that were just in the back of my pantry, old stuff. And it turned out that they were expired. And the moment we bit into the cookies, they had this sour, bitter taste where they were supposed to be sweet. It was disgusting, but also very funny. Or another funny moment I could think of is when I was having this terrible day and I ended up accidentally also picking up my dog's poop with my bare hands. Oh my gosh, so gross, but also kind of funny. I could write about times when I felt anxious, like specifically the first time I went to the store with a face mask on and I was like washing my hands all the time. I was trying to stay 6 feet away from everybody. I was really anxious and worried that I was going to spread it or get it. And so notice how I'm thinking of specific moments where I felt that feeling. That's what I want you to do. If you need to take a moment, pause the video and jot those moments down, you can. I actually did that in my notebook. I don't know if you can see this, but I actually wrote down those moments just really briefly so that I had a list, okay? You can try that now yourself. Our next job is to decide which moment to write. You should be able to talk about the moment you're going to write by saying the time when. It should be just a moment in time, no longer than maybe half a day, okay? So, how do I decide which one to pick? Well, just pick one that seems like it would be kind of fun to write. It really doesn't matter. For me, I think I'll tell the story of the time when I accidentally picked up dog poop with my own hands. That was both a funny time, but also an anxious time. It kind of connects both of those emotions into one small moment, okay? So, where are you gonna do this? In your notebook. If you prefer to type, you can, but I personally like to handwrite out my first draft. So here it is in my notebook. You can see that I actually wrote it all out. You might do the same thing today, okay? I'm gonna read this to you, and I want you to notice those moments where those emotions come out while I'm reading. It had been about a week since school was canceled, and I had been spiraling downward in a vortex of worries and anxiety. I had been reading every news article about how terrible the coronavirus was, about doctors in Italy having to choose who would live and die because there were too many patients, and about how unprepared the United States was. I decided to go for a walk with my dog to clear my head. "Sit," I commanded, holding Eva's yellow leash. "Sit!" She was so excited to see me hold the leash that she completely ignored me, wiggling around and wagging her tail in front of the door. I could feel my frustration building as I rolled my eyes and clipped the leash to her harness. "Sit!" Eva finally sat, tail still wagging, practically bursting with excitement. As I made my way up and down the blocks of my neighborhood, I thought of my parents, who are over 60 and so are considered high risk. The virus hadn't really hit yet where they live, and my dad was still going out to work every day. Why won't he just stay home? I thought to myself. Suddenly, Eva lunged at a squirrel, yanking my arm. "No!" I yelled as I almost lost my grip on her leash. She stopped in her tracks and looked back at me, startled. She looked sad. Great. Yelling at the dog, really helpful, I scolded myself. Let's pause here for a second. Readers, which emotion are you noticing so far? Am I tapping into that excitement? No, definitely not. Is this a moment of boredom? No, definitely not. This is an anxious moment so far, right? I'm using my words in order to create that feeling of anxiety for my reader. Let's keep reading, find out what happens. I thought about my two grandmothers next and dreaded the dark thoughts and worries that filled my imagination. What if, what if, what if? I felt like I was wrapped in a heavy, dark blanket of worry that I just couldn't shake off. Now Eva was pooping. Perfect. I reached for my roll of poop bags and broke one off. I had bought them cheap from the dollar store. They were thinner and flimsier than the more expensive kind, but I figured that just means less plastic for the landfill, right? Plus, I'm always trying to save money. I put the bag over my hand and grabbed the poop, holding my breath like I always do. It felt different. Soft and warm like always, except too soft and too warm. I lifted my hand to see that the bottom of the bag had ripped open and my bare hand was holding the dog poop. Ah! I screamed and threw it, my face twisting in disgust. As I wiped my fingers furiously on the wet grass, I glared at Eva. She stood there, staring at me with her curious gold eyes. She tilted her head and her velvety ears flopped to the side. She had this expression like, "So what?" And I just burst out laughing. I felt like a total fool standing there with poop on my hands and cracking up, but it just bubbled out of me. I couldn't help it. With my clean hand, I rubbed Eva's soft ears and buried my face in her neck. I felt tension and stress draining away as she licked my cheek. "Good girl, Eva," I said with a little smile. "Let's go home." That's it. There's my small moment. A couple of things that I want you to notice about my small moment, writers. Number one, I want you to notice how small of a period of time it took up. That whole scene that I just read you probably only took maybe 15 or 30 minutes of my dog's walk. There was a lot of thinking in my head in that scene, but the actual time was very short. Your small moment should also be a very short amount of time, okay? The other thing that I want you to notice is how I use narrative techniques that we've been practicing all year. Things like dialogue, description, inner thinking, a little bit of action, and a little bit of figurative language. If you can sprinkle those into your small moment today, you are going to be good to go. So I cannot wait to read your small moments. You can type them or handwrite them and send me a photo, and later this week we'll revise them. Good luck!